Hello students, I am here with another video from the chapter Reproduction in Plants from class 7th NCERT book. Before starting today's video, I would like to tell you all that till now what all things we have discussed in this chapter. So we have started with the concept of reproduction in this chapter, where I have told you that it is a process by which a new individual is being created or it is being grown. Okay, so in plants there are two modes of reproduction. One is the sexual mode of reproduction and the other one is the asexual mode of reproduction. So we have started with the asexual mode of reproduction, where we studied about the budding, fusion, budding we have studied, and then we have studied about fragmentation. Then after that we have seen about vegetative propagation, where natural vegetative propagation and artificial vegetative propagation was discussed. So when during artificial vegetative propagation, the things which were discussed was that it was carried out because of the processes like cutting, layering and grafting, and additional to that I have also discussed about the tissue culture. So what was cutting? Cutting means it is we are going to cut a stem from a woody part, from the woody a woody stem will be cut from a plant, and then it was being planted, it was being sown into the soil for some days, and after some days what happens, that a new plant, or you could say that it develops the root. The stem develops the root because nodes and internodes are present, and then they are able to grow properly just because of the presence of the node in their stem. So as the nodes and internodes are helping the plants to grow, it could be used for the cutting purpose. Fine. After that we discussed about the grafting, where the grafting is of different types, there are different ways by which grafting is being done. The graft could be it should have, I must say that it should have the two different qualities, two good qualities. One should have a very good root system and the other should have a very good shoot system. So once one of the plant which is having the good root system is known as the stalk, whereas the plant which is to be grafted over it is known as the scion. So that scion is having the extensive branching, or it has a quality for giving, it is having the quality of it is having all the good characteristic in it. For example, it should have a good branching, then it could bear the good flowers or the fruits. Okay, so that it could increase the yield. If we talk about the grains, then it should yield, it should give more and more number of grains in its kernel. Okay, so here we are talking about the different ways of vegetative propagation. So in the natural mode of vegetative propagation, it takes place with the help of the vegetative parts like roots, stem, leaves, and there was a plant called bryophyllum which is developing the roots, which is developing a new plant from its notches of the leaves. So we have also seen about the sexual mode of reproduction. Before that we discussed that there are two types of flowers. One is known as unisexual flower and the other one is known as the bisexual flower. Why? Because one of the unisexual flower is having only one reproductive part, either of both of them, either the male reproductive part or the female reproductive part. Okay, now if male reproductive part is present on the one plant and female reproductive part is present on the second plant, then how is it possible that the next step of sexual reproduction will take place? So the next step was about pollination. So pollination means it is a transference of pollen grains from from anther to stigma. Okay, and that anther and stigma might be present on the same plant, on the same flower, or it could be present on the different plant on the different flowers, and or it could present at a distance as it is present on the different types of flowers, and it could be on different plants also. Fine. Now if the transference of pollen grains to stigma is taking place only on the same flower, it is known as self pollination. And if the plants are, if the pollen grains and the stigma are present on the different flowers, and those flowers are on different plant or on the same plant, but they are not inside a same flower, so that kind of pollination is known as cross pollination. Okay, once the pollination takes place, and it is also done with the help of certain helpers, and those are known as agents of pollination, such as animals, bees, insect. Okay, so many are there. Even human beings also are somewhat responsible for the pollination. Okay, and we have also discussed about the I mean the types of flower because of which the type of pollinating agent will help in the pollination. Okay. So next we have seen that was about the next step after pollination was the fertilization. Now what is it? It is the way by which the plants are able to fuse the gametes, male and female gametes, inside the ovary of a flower. Now once the fusion takes place, this is known as the fertilization, and after the as a result of fertilization a zygote is formed. And zygote is a very primary stage of the seed, you could say. Once the zygote is formed, it divides. It is going to grow. Once it grows, it going to form a new structure called embryo. Once embryo is being formed, then after that what happens? This embryo is going to develop into the seed. Fine. Then seeds are going to grow into the soil. It is going to be sown into the soil, and as a result of this, what happens? A new plant grows. Okay, so this is about the process of mode of sexual reproduction in the flowers. Now after that, we discussed about the question answers yesterday, though some of the question answers are still left. So we discussed about this, the very first question, that was this fill in the blanks, where we have seen this part, the production of new individual is of a vegetative parent is known as vegetative propagation. Then flowers which either have male or female parts, such flowers are known as unisexual flowers. Okay, so we discussed this. Then after that, the transference of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as the pollination, and this is known as self pollination especially. Okay, and after that, the male and the female fusion of the gametes takes place. This is known as fertilization. Seed dispersal by means, you can write down any of the three seed dispersing agents. Okay, so this we have discussed yesterday. Now some more questions are there to be discussed. So there was a difference between, so the second question also is that saying, describe the different methods of asexual mode of reproduction. So here you could write down the various methods of asexual mode of reproduction which I discussed just now. You could write down about the vegetative propagation, you could write down the cutting, layering, grafting in it. Then you can write down the natural vegetative propagation. Then after that, you could write budding, fragmentation. All these will be included in this part, and you could draw the diagram with the example. After that, we need to discuss is the explain why and what do you understand by the sexual reproduction. Okay, now I have discussed this several times, that what points could be included in this, and yesterday also I have given you some point about sexual reproduction. Fine. Then after that, what is the main difference between sexual and asexual mode of reproduction? This was also been discussed yesterday, that one of the mode, this asexual mode of reproduction, does not require seed, whereas the sexual reproduction takes place with the help of the seeds. Okay, only one individual is required for this asexual mode of reproduction, whereas in sexual reproduction the two flowers are required, or the two different gametes are required, you could say. Okay, and they are produced at different flowers, or they are produced in the different parts of a plant, different parts of a flower. Okay, for as the male gamete is produced inside the anther and female gamete is produced inside the ovary. So both of them are going to fuse, and then they are going to form a new structure called zygote. Next we need to discuss about the reproductive parts of a flower. So you need to draw the reproductive parts of a flower, where you will draw about stamen and pistil. Fine. So these two parts will be drawn as a diagram of the reproductive parts of a flower. Next we discussed about the different explanation about now today we will discuss the difference between self pollination and cross pollination. So as a name suggests, what is the meaning of the word self pollination? So self pollination means, first of all you will write the definition of pollination. Pollination means it is a transference of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the same flower or the different flower on the different plant. It could be on the same plant or it could be on the different plants. Okay, so this will be the first as an introductory line for this question. Then after that you will write down about the difference between these two words. So for that you will divide your page into two parts. First part you will write down self pollination. Okay, then you will write down then after that you will write down about cross pollination. Okay, Then in this self pollination, you will first write down that only one flower is required. Here in cross pollination, more flowers are, means more than one flower is required, or it could require two, even two plants also could be required. So two flowers are required. Okay, as a result, self pollination will take place as a result of the it could take place only with the help of air, or it takes place itself. Agents of pollination for agents are required. Agents of pollination are required in this cross pollination, whereas in self pollination, no agent or only wind is required for just for the self pollination, because flowers are, both the parts are present on the same plant, so same flower. Then it could no, it is not respond, it is not very much, I mean the agents are not required very much for the self pollination, whereas in cross pollination it is a must that you require the agents of pollination. Okay, so this is known as the this was the result of cross pollination, means this could be the difference between cross pollination and self pollination. You could write down some flowers which have both the parts together in the self pollination. Okay, so you can write down the examples in the form of the next difference, and then it takes place at a short distance. Self pollination takes place at short distance, and here long distance flower could be present. Okay, so you could write down the various examples, you could write down various other differences also which are given in your book, or if it is not given and if you feel like that it is it is a difference between self pollination and cross pollination, then you could add up these differences here in this question. Okay, and you could also include about the one more difference about self pollination and cross pollination is that in self pollination the main it takes at a small distance, whereas the cross pollination takes place at a long distance. Okay, and you could also include some more differences if you know that if the difference is it is there, but if it is not present in your book, you could write down on your own. If it is if it requires more, I mean if your if the difference is correct, then you could also include the same, but the thing is that it should have a proper significance. Fine, just like that the examples could also be included. Okay, then pollination agent is not required, you could write down, and also you could write down the agents of like examples you could write where the self pollination is taking place or the cross pollination is taking place. Okay, in the self pollination you could write down about sunflower, you could write down rose, you could write down other I mean flowers name, and then in cross pollination you could write down in the cross pollination you could write down any of the bisexual flower, unisexual flowers. It could be most of the plants is having I mean both unisexual and bisexual flowers could have this cross pollination. There are options with the bisexual flowers, but if only unisexual flower is there, the thing left is only about the cross pollination is only going to happen. So this was about self pollination and cross pollination. You could even draw the diagram for this, just include the diagram for this. Okay, so in this chapter there are lots of diagram, and each and every diagram could be drawn properly, as it is the important part of the chapter. Okay, next you will go on to the next question, that is how does the fertilization takes place in the flower. So what is fertilization? First of all you will define that. Okay, so what is it? It is the fusion of male and female gametes. Male gamete is coming from the anther, which is present in the stamen, and female gamete is present in the ovule, which is present inside the ovary. Okay, so we need to discuss this more details, I want to say. Okay, it should be included in details. So here fertilization takes place as the fusion of male and female gametes is occurring inside the ovary, where a new structure is being formed that is known as the pollen, that is known as a zygote, and as a result of zygote is developed, it is going to form the new structure that is known as embryo as a result of the division of the zygote to form embryos. Then it is going to develop in the form of seeds, and those seeds are responsible for the development of the new plant. Okay, so in fertilization you can write down the answer like this: one of the pollen grains spreads that spreads on it is going to be it is sticked on stigma. After sticking, it is going to develop a pollen tube. So what happens, so you need to draw the diagram which we have already discussed, and it is also given in your NCERT book, that this diagram, once it is going to develop the, I mean, if here the pollen grains are present, then what happens? If pollen grains are present over here, it is going to develop a pollen tube, and you know that ovule is present at the ovary, inside the ovary. So this pollen tube will grow and it will reach till the ovary, and then it is going to fuse. So the male gamete will be released here inside the just beside the ovule, and it is going to fertilize. Fine. So this is how the fertilization takes place. So you will write down this in detail as like this: one pollen grains is going to spread on the stigma, then what happens, it develops a pollen tube. Now this process of it germinates, actually this pollen grain germinates and forms a pollen tube. This pollen tube is moving inside the style and reaches to the ovary where ovule is present. Now once ovule is present, the male nucleus or the male gamete is transferred to the just beside the ovary, just inside the ovary and where the ovule is present, and as a result what happens, this is going to fuse. Then if the male and female gametes are going to fuse together, this process is known as the fertilization, and you will draw the diagram which is given in your NCERT book. And please remember that you will write down these the answer in the point wise manner. So these are the steps where the germination of pollen tube is the must. Once the pollen tube is germinating, then it reaches towards the ovary. Second point. Then in the third point, it is the pollen tube is going to help in the release of the male gametes, okay, which was present inside the pollen grain, okay. And then after that, one more thing which you need to discuss, which you need to include, is that you will include the diagram of this fertilization in your notebook with the answer, okay. Now we'll discuss about the next question, that is question number 8. Fine. This question number 8 says, describe the various ways by which seed is going to disperse. Now what are the various ways of seed dispersal? First of all, write down about what is dispersal. Dispersal means movement of, it is the movement of seeds from one place to another with the help of any agent. Fine. With the help of any agent. Now why these agents are required, why this agent is required? This is required just because the seed could move from one place to another place. Now if overcrowding happens, just because that seeds are always falling on the same just beside the same plant, so all the plants will be overcrowded, and it is going to be difficult for the plants to grow. Why it will be a difficult part? Because the plants needs nutrition, and if the place is less, then plant could not grow properly, okay. So what is the need of the dispersal? The seed dispersal means it is going to help with the help of any of the agents. So next you will write on what are those agents. So you will write the next heading as the various ways by which seed are being dispersed is dispersal by wind. Okay, so first point will be dispersal by wind. Now the seeds which are to be dispersed by the winds, they are light weighted, they have some hair or wings, okay, so they have hairs or wings on their surface, so that they could float easily in the air. It could easily blow with the air, it could be blown with the air. For example, dandelion, maple, drumstick, etc. All these are the examples by which the dispersal of the seeds by the wind will take place. Next is the dispersal by water. So the dispersal by water takes place in some aquatic plants and in some which grows near a water body, okay. Now once the dispersal by wind is water is taking place, it is going to be aquatic, I mean the plants, they need to float, they need to get dispersed by water. The coconut has a seed, and that is tough fibrous covering which has a plenty of air inside it. This helps in coconut seeds to float on water, Okay, it just floats on water. So as a result of the floating on water, so these these seeds have a very waterproof covering. Okay, so these seeds which are going to float with water is having a waterproof covering or a fibrous covering over it. Okay, they are fully waterproof or they have fibrous cover. It is having a fibrous cover on it so that it could float easily with the help of the water, current of water. Next we'll discuss is the dispersal by animals. So third point you will write down as dispersal by animals. Okay, second will be water and the third is the animals. Dispersal by animals. Now in this, some of the seeds have spines. Why animals? Now these animals have also these animals body will have hair on it and the seeds will have certain spines on it. Now once the seed is having the spine like structure on it, what happens? It is going to stick onto the body hair of the animals. Now what happens? It is going to move from one place to another as the animal is moving from one place to another, because the animal could move, it could not sit at a place. But the same condition is with the different condition is with the seeds. The seeds could not move on their own as they are not having the as they are not having the blood. They are not having the legs to walk. So what happens? They need some agents to walk. They need some agents to disperse. So these agents could be animals, water, wind. Okay, so with the current of air, with the current of water, with the animals, these seeds are going to move. Then after that, what happens? The seed gets dispersed with the help of the birds also. So next dispersing agent would be bird. The birds are going to eat the seeds and some of the seeds will be left out just like that. They will be dropped like that, or either from their beak, or it will be released into the soil. It will be released onto the soil with their droppings. Okay, so the animals are also responsible, the birds are also responsible, and they get stuck. The hairy animals will get this is going to attach, the seeds are going to attach on the animal's body. Then next it is the seed could also disperse by bursting. Okay, bursting means if some of the seeds get burst open when they get mature. So because of the force of bursting, the flowers are going to move from one place to another. So the seeds will move from one place to another place just because of the pressure. Okay, now next is that dispersal by human beings. So you will include human beings also in the next point, that is by humans. So humans also form the agents of seed dispersal, because humans can move from one place to another. Like we are eating the fruit and we are throwing the seeds away. So once we are throwing the seeds away, where we are going to throw? We are going to throw it on the soil, so it can grow. It helps in the growth of the plant. So human beings are also responsible for the dispersal of the seeds from one place to another place. Okay, and next thing was that we can also see that there are certain other agents of seed dispersal. Okay, so you could also include them in the form of examples. So these were the main points of the seed dispersal, whereas you could also include them in the form of examples. Now you are going to move on to the next point, and yes, seed dispersal, you will draw the structure of seeds in this. Different types of seeds, structure of seeds which helps in the dispersal. For example, you will draw the wing of the seeds, okay, which is given like this in your NCERT book, or if the seeds have hair like structure present on their body, so they are going to float like that. Okay, so draw these types of seeds which are helpful in the dispersal part. So we'll match the column. It is the next question, that is question number 9. So the first question is buds in the first column, and in the second column maple, spirogyra, yeast, bread mold, potato, and rice, this rose. So what will be the correct answer for this first part? Buds, you are going to join it with the east. Okay, bud will be joined with the east. But why? Because budding is responsible in the budding also happens in the east, so bud will be joined with the east. So first is joined with third. Okay, this A. Next is eyes. Eyes are present in potato, so you will write down fifth. So eyes will be potato. The next is fragmentation, and fragmentation, what is it? Fragmentation is the process of asexual mode of reproduction in algae. So let's find out which one is algae here. So here maple is not an algae, Spirogyra is an alga. So you'll join this with second. Okay, so Spirogyra with fragmentation. Next is that wings. Wings you are going to join with the with some seed which is having wings present on it. So we are going to join it with maple. So let's connect it with one. So this will be wings. Okay, next is the spores. Bread mold will be the correct answer because rose is not going to produce the spores. So this one is the extra point. You could exclude this. I mean, this is just given for the confusion. You have to choose the correct option for matching the column. Okay, so we need to see the different options which are given already, and then we will find out the best part. So bud will be attached. So you are going to join it with the column number from the word, that is fifth. This is third. Okay, then I with potato, that is fifth. Then fragmentation, this is third. Fragmentation by Spirogyra, second. Wings with maple, first. Okay, you will write down first. Then spores with the bread mold, fourth. You will write down fourth. Okay, so this was about the match the column. We'll now take the correct option. The reproductive part of a plant is known as, the reproductive part of the plant is known as what? So in plants there are two parts. One is called vegetative part and the second is known as the reproductive part. Now if we talk about the vegetative part and the reproductive part, so vegetative parts were the stem, leaves and roots. So we have this option, stem, leaves and roots. Okay, so this will be excluded. So what we are left with? We are left with the flower. So this will be the reproductive part. Okay, so answer would be reproductive part of a plant is known as the flower. The next question is, the process of fusion of male and female gametes is called as, the process of only fusion it is asking. So it is known as fertilization. Okay, this is known as fertilization. Fine. Now next we will move on to the next part, that is matured ovary forms the, what you are going to match it with? Seed, pistil, stamen and fruits. So these are the four options. Mature ovary is always going to form what? So it is going to form the seeds. No. Then stamen, no. Then pistil, no. Already it is present in the flower and it is going to form the fruit. So answer will be fruit. Okay, now what happens, as I told you that after fertilization what happens, this is present inside, the zygote is present. Now this zygote develops and all the parts which are present here, the petals, sepals, all these are going to wither away. So we are only left with the ovary. Okay, so this ovary is going to swell. This ovary swells and inside the ovary we have the seeds in the form of the zygote and the embryo. So this develops into the form of the seeds. Okay, so this is about the option which you need to select from these four. So the best one is the fruit. Next is question number D. The spore producing organism is rose, no. Potato, no. Bread mold, yes. And ginger, no. So this is the right answer. So you will just take the correct option, that is bread mold. As bread mold is producing spore in its sporangium, inside this it is having spores. This burst open and then it is going to move out. Okay. Next is bryophyllum can reproduce by its. How can a bryophyllum reproduce? It could reproduce with the help of the leaves. Fine, it could help, it could be grown with the help of the leaves. Fine. So you will write down the bryophyllum is going to, why it is going to reproduce with the help of the leaves, as this bryophyllum is having one structure that is known as the notches are present in this leaves. So these notches are the main place from where the new plants will develop. Okay, so these notches are going to develop a new plant. So if this plant is going to detach from here, it is going to grow in the form of a new individual. So this is how the natural vegetative propagation is going to happen in the bryophyllum. So this is one of the important point which you need to discuss here. This means it is a very important, you could say that it is a very strange point of view that in the bryophyllum only the reproductive organ is a leaf. It becomes reproductive organ and it is going to produce a new structure. So children, that's all was for today's video. As I have completed this chapter, I request you all to solve the question and write down in your copy so that it becomes a practice for you all. Draw all the diagrams. Okay, so you draw the diagrams also which is present in this chapter, and if you have not understood anything in this chapter, you could ask me in your online class, and I feel that you all should complete the work so that it becomes a practice for you all. And yes, diagrams I am reminding you again and again because many diagrams are there. You need to draw the diagram of the flower, then the asexual mode of reproduction and the steps of sexual mode of reproduction in your copy supporting your answers. Okay, and please make sure that you are writing in a good handwriting. So children, that's all for today's video. As I have completed this chapter, I am going to bring up the new chapter in the next video. So please complete your work and send your work in wherever you are sending it as daily, on the daily basis. So that's all for today children. I'll meet you all in the next video with the next topics to be discussed. Thank you for watching the video.